Hey guys, we're here today to talk about New South Wales operational purpose deductions, or OPDs. Now, these are the waste levy exemptions that we claim for both landfill facilities or any other scheduled waste facility. So, a couple of tips to think about because it's an area of interest at the moment for EPA New South Wales, and we're receiving lots of phone calls both from clients, but also from EPA, looking to assist with getting those exemptions in place and making sure the numbers are right. So the first thing to think about is an OPD, or the exemption, doesn't need to be in place before the work happens. There is a 24-month window after work's been completed. Now, I should clarify, it's not 24 months from the work's been completed. It's 24 months from when the transaction came in. You have 24 months if you've received material into your site to claim that exemption. So let's say you built a pad and that was a year ago. Now, that material sat on your site. You might have a waste levy liability after 12 months. You're within that 24-month window. Apply for the exemption. Even if you've already paid waste levy, there will then be an adjustment done to your WCMRs so that that levy liability is reduced from future debt. That's number one. Number two, there are certain types of material that we can actually claim under our OPDs and certain types we don't need to. A concept exists in the regulation of an R&R, a record not report. It is being phased out of New South Wales EPA at the moment. However, if you don't have to report a certain type of material on your waste levy return, the WCMR, you don't need to claim an exemption for it either. It's record not report for a reason. That might include things like venom from quarry, those sorts of things. Number three, thinking of timeliness before, from point number one, about 24 months, we also need to consider that there are no statutory timeframes for the EPA to approve an OPD application, unlike in some other states. So, put your best foot forward. When you're putting an application in, you want to make sure you have all of the information ready to go so that there's less need for the regulator to come back to ask questions. Give them a covering letter, and that should explain what the problem was, why you needed to solve it, and how you solved it. Only needs to be a page, maybe two. And then make sure you've got sufficient documentary support so that whoever is assessing your application has everything they need to go, yep, I can ask a couple of questions and then move forward. The less information you provide, the longer the time frame will be for assessment. Number four, what documents do I actually provide? So if we're looking at historical OPD, so after the fact, engineering diagrams, photos. If you've got before and after photos, add them in. We want conversion factors. So what's the depth of the material that I placed on my facility? What's the size of the pad that I built, or the size of the landfill? How much geofabric did I use? What's the weight of a roll? We want real numbers. And if it's historical and you have weighbridge data, we absolutely want that. And we want to ensure that all of those numbers marry up. Don't give the EPA a set of information from an engineered diagram, a set of information from your transactional system, and they're very different numbers. Make sure you reconcile any of those variations so that, again, you're giving a clear and consistent picture of what happened on your site to the EPA for approval. And number five, I think we're up to number five. I hope we're up to number five. If we're not, I missed number four. Number five, make sure that when you're actually receiving material, it is actually fit for specification and it meets requirements in the legislation. I have recently had a client who had implemented some final capping. The capping depths that they used were actually greater than what was approved in legislation at the time that they received those materials and did that work. So this was a historical OPD. That means they now have a disconnect. So it's great that you might, have a pad that's this big. Regulation says it only needs to be this big. You're only getting to get an exemption for this, not the extra piece. So then there's potential risk that you're out of pocket from a levy liability. These are all considerations to have when you're completing any of your OPD work. But lastly, the most important thing to think about is this is not something that relates only to landfills. OPDs relate to any scheduled waste facility who might be receiving waste material for operational purpose. Because if you receive material, let's say concrete, aggregates, dirt, something else that you then place on the land or in the land, that means it will, after 12 months of sitting there, now meet the stockpiling requirements of being leviable. You're never going to remove it. So it's going to be over 12 months old and therefore leviable. So for those scheduled waste facilities that don't regularly pay waste levy, that's where that liability can kick in. So just be conscious of those rules. If you've got any questions, reach out to EPA New South Wales. And as always, you're very welcome to reach out to Resource Hub. We do a whole bunch of work in this space and we'd love to chat with you.